Hey everyone. I wanted to just do a quick demo today to just dovetail some of the work you'll be doing with Blender for homework this weekend, just to get us started building things, exporting them into Unity. The process is not exactly straightforward, so we're going to start out kind of simple here and just work with a static mesh that we bring in, that we apply a material to, and then we have positioned and scaled how we want it relative to things in the world in Unity. Now, I'm not, Blender is not actually like my strong suit, so there are a number of high quality resources that you can find online that will help you through this. Don't learn from my bad habits. Again, there may be better ways, probably are better ways to do a lot of the things that I'm doing. But I know the kind of clunky ways that I work through it, and that's what I'll be working with today. So I've made a little chair here that's essentially dovetailing into the basic Blender tutorial that I'll have you take a look at this weekend. And what I want to do with this chair now is take it out of the world space here in Blender and make it something that matches a set of dimensions that I'm interested in working with in Unity. And by default here, you can see that we're given a scale on our X, Y, and Z axes they're kind of relative to the units in space here. And I've got the units set up by default so that in our scene, our units are set up to 1 meter per unit. That's also relative to what Unity does as well. So that's good. But what's going on here that's a little bit different than what I really want is that the scale doesn't really tell me a lot about the dimensions on any one of these axes relative to like what that space would be in meters. And to do that, I actually have to toggle on the transform panel here. And to do that, I can either toggle it with the N key or click on this tiny little arrow and it'll pop out. And you can see it's essentially the same information here that's available down below. But it also gives me this added set of dimensions, which gives me the real world value here relative to the units that I have in the space. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just resize this thing. If I was really concerned about the relationship between one axis and the other in the way that I modeled this chair, I would scale this down and try to get it as close as I could to one axis, and then use that as a baseline for everything else. In this case, I'm just trying to get it down so that it fits into a prescribed grid size. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of take it and reduce it down on each axis so that it fits in a grid of 1 by 1 by 2, right? And so we now know that on the X and Y axes, this is 1 meter by 1 meter, and then on the Z axis, that is 2 meters. Now, the other thing that I want to do that I find really helpful is to be able to zero out the position of this so that when I bring it in, I'm able to place it relative to a point of origin that's useful to me. And in this case, with a chair or a piece of furniture, that is often going to be the place where it meets the ground. And so right now, our point of origin is, basically in the middle of this chair where I started modeling it. And that's not exactly where I want to bring it in. It creates some extra work that I need to do in Unity. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some changes here so that we can position it relative to just one of the corners of the leg here. And so now I'm going to go and switch out of object mode into edit mode, just so I can go and grab one point here, one vertex, just this single corner here. And I have to kind of do a goofy thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to set it to this position. And so I'm going to hold down Shift S and get my snap menu here. And I'm going to choose cursor to selected. And you can see it pops right to the corner there. And now I'm going to go back up to object mode. And this little orange dot that we can see right in the middle here, that's representative of my model's origin. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that origin point now so that it matches this cursor. So to do that, I'm going to select Object, and I'm going to set Origin, and Origin to 3D Cursor. And you can see here we are right down in the corner now. I'm going to go ahead and switch to orthographic view here so I can see, what I'm looking at more easily. I'm going to make it so that I'm moving this point up here to this baseline, which is 0. We can see that the current location is here. It's negative 0.9 something. And so I'm just going to type in the number 0 here, and that's going to pop us right up there. I'm not too concerned about this right now, though I could, I guess, move it up so that we move the cursor to the selected. It goes right back where it was before. But now we have something positioned on the ground. So we've made 2 transforms here. We've made a transformation in the scale of the object, and we've made a transformation in the position. And you can see that Blender is holding on to this information. Now, before we export anything over to Unity, we want to make sure that we kind of normalize this stuff so that we make it the new baseline. And so what I can do is I can go ahead and make those adjustments now. I can go here and choose to Object, Apply. And here I could choose if I wanted to make specific adjustments, zero them out, essentially make them the new baseline, or if I want to pick individual or apply a broad brush and do this to all transformations. And so in this simple example, I can just apply this to all of my transformations. And when I do that, you can see my scale now has been reduced. It's been returned to 111, right? So it's no longer interested in the dimensions that that were appearing over here, or excuse me, the scale that was appearing here. It's all been switched to a new baseline. My location has been zeroed out as well. And you can see also my point of origin now is right in the middle of that object. I'm at 0 still, so my base is still here. But I've been moved right into the middle, there. Right into that point, which is a great place, right? Because it centers my chair when I bring it into Unity, and then it also makes sure that it's sitting on the ground. Now, a couple of other things here. So we can go and set materials to these meshes that we have here in Blender before we bring them into Unity. So for example, I could select my chair here in object mode, select my material properties. We can go and create. Oops, there we go. Material, why don't I just make it like a kind of a yellow color. Okay. And then to see this, I'm going to move it either here. So we just have the viewport shading, which is showing me a preview of my material, or the viewport shader that's showing me like the render view. So right now we have a simple light in here, gives us an idea kind of what this would look like. A word about these materials here. We get a lot of options relative to what we get in Unity's standard shader. We're going to ignore most of these. Essentially what we're going to do is use these as placeholders for us to be able to really kind of like specify and control things using the built-in PBR shaders for Unity. And so I've got that set up. Maybe what I'll do here is I'll make another little object and sit it on the chair just to give us something else to bring into Unity. And so I can go into Object, Add. Let's create a mesh, and maybe we'll create like a little UV sphere. I got a big one here. Look at it from the top. Just going to position this so it looks like it's somewhat sitting on top of the seat here. And for this example, it's not really critical that I have it really like dead on, but I can switch to orthographic view here and really make sure that it's exactly where I want it to be. So while this is selected now, maybe I'll go ahead and create another material. And in this one, I'll set this to like this color, right? Just to give us something to look at here. And you can see each one now, as I select it, has its own material. If I had multiple meshes composing a single object here, then I would have a list of materials that I might use and create some substitutions for if I wanted to in Unity. We should also see what's happening here in our scene collection, right? So right now things are named in in a way that's not particularly friendly. These things carry over to Unity, so we should rename this stuff. So my cube is not really a cube anymore as much as it is a chair. And my sphere is, I mean, it's still a sphere, but let's just call it a ball just to give it a little more purpose. And you can see that we also have things like cameras and lights in here. We really don't need a camera, so we can get rid of that. We're not planning on animating this inside of Blender here. An interesting thing though is if we bring this over to Unity, it'll bring these things over with us. So for example, if we include this light, it will bring it over and create a usable light for us in Unity as well. We'll still have to tweak it and set everything up, but it will recognize it as such. And so, you know, I find it nice to kind of look at this, you know, in the scene more so than it looks here, even though, again, these colors are not really representational of what I'll get. It gives me a better idea of what I might be looking at. But it means that I have to remember to take these essentially like out of the thing that I'm exporting into Unity, because it will bring that stuff over for me. Now, another thing we should probably do here is we should probably make a copy of this before we make any you know, additional changes to this. It's a good idea to have kind of like a working copy of something and then a copy that you're exporting as well, so we can make any final adjustments. We can make sure that everything's kind of, you know, just sort of run through and set up in a way that makes it easy for Unity. So I'm going to say this is my chair original. And then I'm just going to duplicate this and make this collection this is going to be the one that I actually keep. And so this one, I'm going to just deselect here. It's currently occupying the same space, but now once I select this, you can see it's only selecting this stuff down here in this collection here. Note too, I'm not selecting the light, right? It's important that we have this geometry selected, because when we go to export this here in just a moment, we're going to make sure that that those things are again relative to, you know, to where we to all the choices that we want to make and bring into Unity. I'm going to do one more set of adjustments here, right? So I did move the ball here. It's not important that I keep track of where that is. So once again, I'm going to go to apply, and I'm going to apply all my transformations here, and see once again we've got this nice spot here that's been transformed right down at the bottom for us, and so that'll make things nice and easy for us. Another choice we have is if we don't want to really deal with these as two separate game objects in Unity, we can reduce some of the load that Unity, you know, is going to require to be able to render these things by creating a singular object that we're bringing in. And so to do that, what we could actually do is select both of these things and then choose to join them. And there we go. Oh, I don't think I did it here. Let's see. Object. Join. There we go. And you can see here now I just got a single thing that I'm bringing in. And I can't separate these again. This is why it's important that I have a copy that I'm working from if this is the choice that I want to make. But it does, you know, reduce the geometry that Unity has to do things like render lights on. But the nice thing, I'm going to back up just for a second here, is if I do keep these separate, is that I can treat them as separate things. So for example, if I wanted to model this as a set of things and then separate them out into Unity as unique game objects or prefabs, I could do it this way, and I would already have them set up where I want them to be. So there's kind of a nice thing about bringing this in, but it is a trade-off, right? There's always kind of a trade-off associated with this process. Okay, so otherwise I've made my adjustments here. I've transformed all these things and fixed them. And so now what I'm going to do with these two things selected is that I'm going to go to File, Export, and once again, we are going to export this as an FBX. I mentioned it at the very beginning, but I'll repeat it now. The reason we're doing this, instead of using Blender's native file, which Unity does support, is that if we're planning on working with other people, if we use Blender's proprietary format, it will require anybody working on that project to have Blender installed, regardless of whether they intend to open that particular 3D model or not. So they'll just have to have it as a way of even being able to participate in your team. And so depending on the tool chain that you have established, you may not be working with free open source software like Blender. You may be working with some other proprietary format and tools that not every team member will have access to. So we're going to use FBX. FBX is widely supported. It's got some quirks in terms of the way that we're going to get things in there, but hopefully we've got everything sort of adjusted now in a way where we don't have to worry about it too much. And so in this case, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm limiting this export to the selected objects. Again, if I don't, it'll bring in everything. I'll get my lights, I'll get my camera, anything else. I'll get some duplicates. And in this case, because we've already done all of this work to make sure that we're facing the right way here and all of these things, we're going to leave all of the other things as they are. So we'll give this thing a name. We'll put it somewhere we can easily find it as well. Let's just call this one chair. I'm going to export the FBX. Okay. All right, and let's bring this in now. Oops. Oh, where did it put it? Maybe it put it in documents for me. Let me export that again instead of digging around my files. So file, export, FBX. All right. Oh, it did put it in documents right there for me. Anyways, let's go to desktop, chair.fbx, export it, selected objects, export it, FBX. Great. Excellent. Now let's go back to Unity here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my FBX file and put it into models. And let's see how we did. It looks good. Right? We can see our little preview here. Again, you can see the color is really not, not really that close to what we were dealing with. But again, we can make changes to all of this stuff. Let me go ahead and put a plane in here, just to have some surface to sit on, and we'll transform that back to 0. I'm going to take my directional light and make this so that it's a nice neutral color. And now what I'm going to do to get it in the scene here is I'm going to place it right here, just like that. Perfect. And because of where my light is, I can't really see it. So why don't we go ahead and rotate that? Very dramatic. Great. Excellent. There we go. All right. And once again, so we're looking at, because we've taken a lot of care to make sure that we're positioning these things as we want them, which is, right here on the bottom. I don't have to go and move anything else. If I want to bring another one in, I just bring another one in, and then it's placed, relative to the bottom as well. But then also I can, this is interesting, yep. I can also change these materials around. So for example, if I wanted to, I could open up this model here. I could take this. Actually, I can't take these materials, right? Because this is the reason we're going to create our own materials here in Unity. These things are really baked in here. We're not going to be able to tinker around with them. But what we can do is here, we can go and look at our import settings and choose materials. And we can replace these materials that we're working with, right? And so we didn't name them, which is not great, right? But here we can probably guess. So here's my chair. I'm going to bring that right there. And then this is going to be my ball, like that. And then we'll hit apply. There we go. There we go. And we have something that is much closer to what we're expecting.